was out, they pulled me back in.
Welcome to the Ibuki Cabal Show.
What's up, guys? Excuse me. Back again. Today, we're gonna talk about my take on Lifetime TV. TV for the creation of victims and feminists. So, I don't know how much, you guys really know about Lifetime and how much, of an impact it's had on people's lives since its inception, and just the perception of male and female interaction here in the United States. Lifetime has been influential, extremely influential with regard to how women characterize their interactions with men in general. I think it's had some unintended consequences. Maybe for some. I think for others, I think they were intended consequences throughout its evolution as a television show. But we're going to explore that a little bit. And before we do, I just want to thank my subscribers for hanging on with me. And hopefully I can get a few more, and I can keep putting out content that you guys are interested in listening to. So here we go. So Lifetime is a network. It started in 1984. It's like 37 years ago it premiered. And it characterized itself as television for women. I mean, that was its calling card during that time. So it propelled itself onto the world stage with stories about women-centered content, and they characterized a lot of their stories as true stories, and they titled their shows, that way in order to, get the taste buds wet for the ladies. So, their stories basically spanned the likes of, incest, divorce, self-harm, stalking, mental health issues, abduction, HIV and AIDS, cancer, eating disorders, sexual assault, teen violence, teen pregnancy, and abusive relationships in general. Women scorned, punk rock teens in jeopardy, homicidal maniacs on the loose, home-wrecking femme fatales, midlife crisis turned pathological stories, dynasty-like personality clashes. And if you don't know what that's like, that's basically just reality TV where women were always, getting into it verbally, sometimes physically. Dynasty, Dallas, the TV show where they were, basically, catfights, that got the ratings going, back in the 80s and up to the 90s, they basically call that poisonalities, and clashes, high school rivalries that turned into true crime stories, bloodbaths. The channel had everything that you could possibly want with regard to some sort of crime story, dysfunctional behavior, and somewhere, somehow, somebody figured out that this is the type of content that women enjoy. I mean, they can't get enough of it. So, most, men and women during that time, 1984, when they first got their taste of Lifetime, it was characterized or mischaracterized as, religious programming, and basically people weren't watching very much of their programming. In truth, it was tabloid fodder, and just the type of daytime television that soap operas would kind of put out, but in a shorter, packaging. But most men and women during that time, got their first taste of feminism from the network. Before they even understood what feminism was, they were basically ingesting this and being socially engineered to think a certain way. And I'm looking back in retrospect. I remember when I first saw Lifetime. I mean, I watched, I think a couple of the stories, and it wasn't very tasteful to me. It wasn't something that I felt like I could gravitate to it. These stories basically characterized women as eternal victims, and it just puzzled me that these women felt some need to watch this type of stuff over and over and over. I mean, every time they put something out, it's just a different spin on negativity and fear-based victim TV. So now Lifetime, is adding, new type of content, but we'll get into that a little bit later. In the 2000s, Lifetime, began to change their format to try to look like it was something a little bit more like regular, TV, the TV that people kind of grew up with, and these made-for-TV movies basically would come along, and they were almost like movies that came out at the theaters, but low budget. So one of them that came out was The Burning Bed, where Farrah Fawcett basically was in an abusive relationship, and she basically was trying to go to school, trying to do things to better herself. It was almost laid out like a Betty Friedan, type part of her novel where, she was trying to go to school. The husband didn't want her to go to school. At first he said it was, he said, oh yeah, he seemed like he was okay with it. Then he would basically just beat her, beat her in front of the kids and whatnot, force her to have sex, things like that. And, this went on for a time until she basically, waited until he was asleep and set him on fire. And, everybody cheered. I mean, it was just the greatest thing in the world, I think that was one of the main ones that basically just propelled the network into, stardom. But we'll get, further into that in a little bit. But we're just gonna kind of go through some of this a little bit. When the channel was basically made fun of, by some of the early folks because it was so tabloid-esque. The network was basically kept alive by Dr. Ruth. If you guys don't know who she is, I mean, she's a little old lady that basically used to talk very, very loosely about sex and how we should go about conducting ourselves sexually. She talked about everything, it's like toys, all kinds of stuff, things that you just wouldn't at that time. Basically, the networks were kind of uncomfortable with. But I mean, she got great ratings. And like I said, they initially thought that this was like a church, a network, but here you have Dr. Ruth on there, and she's basically carrying the network up until 1991, and everybody else was pretty much wary of her because of her graphic approach and exuberant approach to sex. So Lifetime struggled with ratings, and like I said, they revamped their whole methodology about how they were going to approach viewers. And they knew they had to do something to get those up, so they basically did their first show in 1990. It was a show. It was a made-for-TV thriller, called Memories of Murder. And this was about an a housewife with amnesia who has no clue that she's being stalked by a lunatic because she's got temporary brain damage. So this was an instant success for the network. So from there, they saw they were onto something. So they made their next one, which was Mother May I Sleep with Danger. And this was with Beverly Hills 90210's Tori Spelling. And she also starred in Co-Ed Call Girl, which also had great ratings. Women's groups saved Lifetime from being cut. They kept on, producing the tabloid-esque, programming, and the network, after all of itself, all of the branding, calling itself television for women, basically felt like they had to give the women what they wanted, which was something to keep them from being bored. They felt like that was important for them to live up to, was being the first women's channel to basically produce female-driven content and programming. So feminist groups started to get together and with them and produce content that was along those lines. Basically, content about parent-child dynamics, marital problems, and feminist causes that they felt would resonate with the viewers that they were serving. So there was a little battle that went on behind the scenes, where the powers that be in the mid-90s wanted to drop the network, and this was in favor of making room for Rupert Murdoch's all-new Fox channel. So women felt like they were being slighted by this. So Pat Schroeder, Colorado Democratic representative, told the New York Times that women kind of feel like they're being rolled over so that guys who run these companies can make more money. So protests from various women's groups happened in support, to show the support for the channel. So the channel continued to make the same kind of content, you know, the more crazy and sadistic the content, the better. You know, the more dramatic, the more jaw-dropping, the better for the network. So, you know, by the 90s, Lifetime had cemented its position as a place where women could basically live out their fantasies, I guess, about, you know, this type of content. So that made a movie that was pretty successful called Guilty Pleasures. And the Washington Post at that time basically had an article that basically said the more devastating the movie topic, the better it is for business. Teen deaths, bullying, murder, prostitution, nannies kidnapping babies. The horrific but captivating plots became a running joke in the industry, but viewers couldn't get enough of it. So, I mean, even more content was or programming was continued to being churned out. My Stepson, My Lover, Another Woman's Husband, the bluntly named Daddy, based on a novel, went to the top of the honors charts for Lifetime's lurid but irresistible hierarchy. They had another one. You know, these titles are just crazy. I mean, The Secret Sins of the Father. This was a story about a father and son who are sleeping with the same woman. Here's another one, She Woke Up Pregnant, which featured Linda Carter of Wonder Woman fame and A Woman Scorned, starring Meredith Baxter, the hippie mom from the Family Ties TV show, as a creatively vengeful wronged party whose husband leaves her for a younger woman. So, you know, as you can see, you know, these titles, the stories, I mean, they're just crazy. So you have to be able to see that over time, after people watching this over and over and over and over, what this brought about. You know, the channel just was the place for you know, teenagers and young women, you know, during that time. I mean, I grew up during the 80s, you know, and you know, kids watching this, and this being the blueprint or the example of what life had to offer once you became of a certain age. I mean, it was you being fearful of you know, the world. The world's gonna get you if you're a woman. You know, it's just, it was victim mentality. And it's creating a victim mentality, and we see some of the, you know, the results of the consumption of this type of programming for decades. So they, you know, they, again, you know, like I said, I mean, it talks more about, you know, the Teens in Jeopardy movies. And these were incredibly successful, according to Arturo Atarian, the vice president of Lifetime's original movies, in an interview that was written by the Washington Post in 2015. She says, we would sit around the room and talk about all the horrible things that could happen to teens or what teens could do. And although the films did bode well for the company, Lifetime began trying to distance itself from the cringeworthy titles over time and the overly dramatic tropes that they had been making tons of money off of and basically drawing people in with. I mean, these worst case scenarios were just loved, beyond measure. So we have to ask ourselves, why did Lifetime want to move away from, the things that made it so titillating to women? And Lifetime was trying to make itself look more respectable. And, they hooked basically the audiences with all of the horrible, events that could possibly befall a woman. And then they started trying to make movies that were more along contemporary lines. So, Tanya Lopez, the senior vice president of original film programming, told a publication that I think the goal was to make the movies more relevant, make them feel more contemporary, make them build a new audience, says Tanya. Said not just keeping the audience that we had, and we really had to turn the ship around. So by the early 2000s, Lifetime began to branch out into increasingly serious programming, and much of it was even good enough to garner some praise. So in 2008, The Memory Keeper's Daughter, about a father who gives his newborn daughter away because she has Down syndrome, earned an Emmy Award for prime time. Also in 2009, Prayers for Bobby, about a gay man who commits suicide because his mother, Sigourney Weaver, won't accept his sexuality. This movie also garnered a Golden Globe, Screen Actors Guild, and a Producers Guild of America Awards, and nabbed the GLAAD Media Award in 2010. Wow. So clearly, the people running this network had and have an agenda. And I think this needs to be explored. I think we have talked about some of the impact that this has had, and I think it's important for us to explore, but we're gonna move on here. So Lifetime was responsible for creating a lot of the stars that we see, like Kristen Stewart from Twilight. In 2004, she starred in Speak, a story about a high school student trying to cope with the aftermath of sexual assault. Okay. In 1998, Kirsten Dunst, the child vampire Claudia, in Interview with a Vampire, starred in Lifetime's favorite, 15 and Pregnant, playing the proverbial young mother in trouble. In 2007, Nina Dobrev of Vampire Diaries starred in Too Young to Marry, a tale of an ardent and impetuous teenage couple who are determined to get hitched even though everybody else thinks correctly that it's a terrible idea. So there you have a little bit of some of the history about Lifetime and where we, how we got to where we are today. So, like I said, these stories characterize women as eternal victims, and I think it's not good. It is, without someone who is level-headed explaining what these people are consuming, I think it can have disastrous effects. And I think we're seeing some of that right now. So for 20 years, Lifetime has been teaching women about their world. And like I said, you have to ask yourself, how many young girls and women have been engineered to be prepared for a world that likes to hurt little girls, a world hostile to women, sexually harasses women, objectifies women. In their eyes, this is what they see. Lifetime exposes women to distressing imagery in order to socially engineer them to be feminist. When the network was about to go under, feminist organizations bailed them out, kept them afloat. And it's undeniable what they wanted in return for this, to create the type of programming that's going to fill our ranks with women who believe what we want them to believe, what we need them to believe. So there's a concept called social learning theory that proposes that new behaviors can be acquired by observing and imitating others. So in other words, it teaches women to live vicariously through the horrific fictionalized experiences of other female characters on Lifetime and Lifetime-like programs. So this is where we get these anecdotal stories and this believe all women, and if she says it happened, and it's just it's hard to explain how a person who thinks logically can look at the evidence of the creation and the life of this network and not be distressed, especially if they're a man. Even if they're a woman, and they come to the realization later on in life that this is not really the way the world is. Can you imagine what that will feel like? So, Lifetime shows women in the worst possible situations that could conceivably happen to a person, usually a woman. And the victims live through these encounters and teach the viewer about the strength and resilience of women. The number of stories that deal with sexual assault are alarming, to say the least, on this show. Lifetime is its own illogical world that tries to make women feel better about their lives by watching women live through and take revenge on men after horrific fictionalized events, almost in a fetishistic, if that's a word, kind of way. There are movies that I can go into, and I think I'll talk about a few of those also. That kind of went along the same lines of this. Lifetime, hopes to capitalize on the success of its new shows like surviving R. Kelly documentaries, his producers, benefited from the hashtag Me Too movement, both in terms of the eventual audience interest and the flood of other accusers that came out. 3.5 million people viewed a 6-part documentary that it produced, and I use that term loosely. The description of it as a documentary is very loosely do I use that. Wow. Bree Miranda Bryant, Lifetime's head of unscripted development, stated that if we can do more, we'll figure that out. That was really an exploration of power in general. And we're talking about other places where we should be mining. So when she's talking about mining, she's basically talking about going out here and looking at things in the Black community that Black women are distressed about, and finding stories that they can make into more surviving R. Kelly like content, so the women will watch it and they can play it over and over and over and over and create a narrative off of it and make money off of it. So make no mistake, you are being played with. In the past, documentaries were not done until after a trial was had, and there was a result that was mediated out through the law. But now what Lifetime is doing is basically they are trying to influence decisions. But the reason why they didn't do that was so that they wouldn't bias or affect the judicial process. But in this case, I think Lifetime did this documentary to do just that. And Black women, the largest consumers of R. Kelly's music, are okay with them condemning a Black man without due process. You can think what you want to about R. Kelly. We can assume what happened. We can say whatever, but let's take R. Kelly out of this process. And what you're essentially saying is that you're going to allow a TV show to dispense justice based on its characterization and what it can make you believe about whoever they make a documentary about. And this is dangerous. So I'm going to close by saying, you should go and look into Ida B. Wells. I wonder what she would say about the R. Kelly and the Bill Cosby situation. Ida B. Wells took time out of her other pursuits, and she went down south, and didn't even think about her own safety. She put herself in jeopardy in order to protest and to shine a light on Black men being lynched for false accusations of rape. That was a part of her legacy, a part of her story. Now, we talk a lot about Black women not having our backs and not doing for Black men, not caring about Black men. Well, that was an era. That was the era, a part of first wave feminism, that basically had Black women going out trying to do what they could to prevent Black men from dying. That's powerful. I want y'all to think about that. For the ladies that may still be with me, you know, I've noticed that, you know, my numbers have dropped for women, so they don't particularly care for that. But I think this is an honest look at the effects of networks like Lifetime giving one-sided programming to influence the way young women and girls view men. And then I want you to look at the numbers of Black women that consume this content. The numbers of women in general that consume this content. I remember being in a hospital and getting on an elevator, and I was getting off work, and I heard, you know, most of the women on the elevator talking about, did you see this, you know, this show on Lifetime? And I blurted out, I was like, that is victim TV. Why do you guys watch that? That is crazy. And the reaction that I got from these women was like, he doesn't get it, you know, but it wasn't as bad as it is right now. The atmosphere was totally different, but the fervor in which they talked about consuming this programming that showed women being abused and done any kind of way it was sadistic. It really was. It was. I mean, you have to be a special kind of mental in order to not see this for what it is. I mean, and I saw it instantly. And I talked about it with other men, and we all said, man, that is crazy. That's not something I want to watch. But I mean, some of us, I'm sure we were, you know, forced to sit there with our girls and watch this stuff. And it's like, wow, man. But just sit back and think about what I said, you know, and tell me what you guys think in the comments. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me. And I'm going to keep on looking for good stuff that we can talk about. I appreciate you guys.
You are listening to Abuki Cabal, the analytical savage.